Hello again to all the warriors for justice out there who are righting wrongs and upholding our greatest American freedom, the right to an unfettered and unlimited trial by jury of your peers. I'm your host, Rafe Foreman, for this podcast brought to you by the original Trial Lawyers College. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Holidays to whatever faith that you celebrate, whatever traditions that you hold dear to your heart. This is the holiday edition of the TLC podcast, and our special guest today is Valerie Malone, and it'll become obvious why she's the special guest here later. But I really want to welcome you, Valerie, and say you're such a great example of the giving nature of people in the holidays, and I wanted to find out, why do you think people are in the mood to give so much during the holidays? Why aren't we in it? Why aren't we in such a giving mood all the time?
Well, first, thank you for having me. But as far as why during the holidays, I don't know that I really know the answer to that. It's why we're more giving at the holidays. I'm really grateful that we are. I'm really grateful that we take that time to stop, to pause, and to notice the folks around us, and to notice what their needs are and how we can help them. I wish we did do it all year round.
Right.
We'd be a better place if we did. But it is wonderful that we do it right now.
I think it may be, for my part, it's this time of year they remind you that giving is part of the season's traditions. You know, the food service lines are open all the time. You can go serve the homeless people 12 months a year, 52 weeks a year. But we, for some reason, get up and go do it. Some people do during the holidays. And I just have pondered that. Why are we in such a giving mood during the holidays? And I don't know the answer. It's just something I've noticed.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that it is just the time that we are reminded to take notice of everybody around us and what their needs are, and to help.
Well, speaking of reminded, I mean, every year that I've known you, you and your firm line cars up for blocks, probably miles, to give toys away. And it's just such a remarkable feat. I see it on the news, and I'm just astounded that that's happening. Tell us about what do you call it, and how did it start, and what does it mean to you?
It's called Santa Carlson's Toys to Go, and how it started was last year during COVID. We recognized at this time of the year that the kids had been cooped up. They hadn't been able to go to school. Everybody was kind of in quarantine, and they weren't going to get to see Santa, and they weren't getting human connection. And then for the parents, it was a really tough time. We had a lot of folks that were out of jobs. You know, if you're waiting tables or you're, working in the service industry, a lot of those places were closed, and people were having a hard time to provide for their family, let alone to be able to afford something like Christmas gifts. And so that's what started that idea. And we didn't realize what the outcome would be, but it was really amazing. It's one of the most rewarding things, that for me is one of the most rewarding things. And you're right, people showed up 2 or 3 hours last year and this year before it even started. The first family that showed up really touched my heart. They got there 3 hours early and were the most polite family ever. And he asked me, do I need to park my car, or can I pull up here? I said, just pull up there, and you'll be the first one in line. Those kids sat there for 3 hours patiently waiting for their one gift. And every time we brought out presents, their little eyes lit up. And so it was wonderful. Cars backed up for miles. We were at 50th and University. They were backed up to Avenue Q and went through a neighborhood. So it was a lot of folks. But then this year we continued the tradition. And in looking at this year, things are even harder, Rafe.
Yeah, they are.
Toys, I mean, if you're just talking about the price of toys, they're up 10%, but we are short on everything. So supply and demand means every single thing is more expensive. And when you don't have the money to pay for groceries, and you haven't really recovered from what has happened to you during COVID, Christmas can become an impossibility. So it was a way to just bring some Christmas spirit to Lubbock and a lot of little ones.
Well, I know it. I didn't realize this was only the second one. I thought y'all had done it for a lot of years, but I know it means a lot to your firm and your family because of the amount of hours and time that you put into it. But something that was sort of special to me is you're giving these toys to the underprivileged or people who are having a hard time, and yet many of them give you gifts back. And you shared one of the gifts that you got this year, and I was particularly touched by it. And tell us about that.
Yes, I was touched by that too. A little girl named Alice. So as these kids waited in their cars for a few hours to get for the line to even start, I passed out candy and just went and talked to all of them and Santa Claus and et cetera. And somebody had already passed out some candy as well because we're all trying to visit with them. And I get to a car and Alice is in the car and she's waiting for me. I can see as I approach that car, she has got me and her on her radar and she's waiting for me. And she said, I have a gift for you. You've been out here helping all these people and I'd like to give you something back. And what she had done is she colored a little picture of Santa in her car, and she gave me the candy she had gotten. She wrapped that picture up and gave me that back. And so sweet little Alice, I still have her picture in my office. I hung that up and I do treasure that. She gave me what she had, just like the do good thing that we were talking about. You don't always have to have money to do good. You can give someone your smile, your time, and for Alice, she gave me her artwork and her love.
That's just a beautiful story. It reaffirms what this season is about, and that's giving without expectations. And we have a story about that we're going to get to here in just a second. But I want to know, are you wearing elf uniform? Are you wearing Santa suit? What are you wearing while you're out there giving these toys away?
Well, I'm Mrs. Claus.
Oh, wow.
So I have Mrs. Claus outfit on, and we have lights. We're wearing lights. We have lighted hats. We have Santa Matt.
Yeah.
And we have the Grinch, and then the others are dressed
up.
Who's
the Grinch?
The Grinch is actually Amy O, who's a radio personality here.
Yeah.
It was her boyfriend that came out and did that for us. And then the sororities and the fraternities helped, but mostly the sororities. They all came out and they were like dressed up and had put lights on too. And I loved watching what that event did for them because I don't know what their expectations were, but afterwards I got text from those kids saying, this is the best thing ever. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of that. They bonded with those kids. They had so much fun.
That's great. And the thing, that's kind of what our program is focusing on today. No matter what religion you practice, no matter what faith or traditions you hold dear, everybody needs help and everybody can help and everybody can, some gave all, some gave some gave all. Just give what you have. And sometimes all you have is a smile. Sometimes all you have is just a moment of time. Sometimes all you have is just let the other car into your lane. But that spirit of giving and generosity is what we're talking about today. And why is it important for us, especially as trial lawyers in the Trial Lawyers College, to have a spirit of giving back?
Well, beyond the obvious reason, I think that trial lawyers are probably the most big-hearted, giving, wonderful people. I mean, they fight the fight and they are passionate about humans and they're extremely empathetic. They have all these big hearts, and I think it's good for them to give during the Christmas time to show who they really are, so that the perception of trial lawyers evolves. as well. I hope that makes sense.
It does. I want to share with you something that I know a family that received a toy, and they refer to you as Mother Christmas. And I just thought that was such a sweet thing to say. They didn't call you Mrs. Santa. They said, "Oh, do you know Mother Christmas?" And of course, Matt's Father Christmas. I just think it's so neat to be perceived and referred to in a community as something other than an ambulance chaser, or as something other than, a person who defends the constitutional rights of the wrongfully accused. They don't ever call us that. They just call us, whatever our client is that we represent. And so it's great to have a different image in our society. So talking about images, let's introduce a fella that some people want to know. Attention to all parents who need to tell the truth about Santa. The son says, "Mom, I think I'm old enough now. Is there a Santa Claus?"
Okay, I agree that you're old enough. But before I tell you, I have a question for you. You see, the truth is a dangerous gift. Once you know something, you can't unknow it. So once you know the truth about Santa Claus, you'll never understand and relate to him as you do now. So my question is, are you sure you want to know?
Yes, I want to know.
Okay, I'll tell you. Yes, there is a Santa Claus.
Really?
Yes, really. But he's not an old man with the beard and a red suit. That's just what we tell kids. You see, kids are too young to understand the true nature of Santa Claus. So we explain it to them in a way that they can understand it. The truth about Santa Claus is that he's not a person at all. He's an idea. Think of all those presents Santa gave you over the years. I actually bought all of those, or I made them for you myself. I watched you open them, and did it bother me that you didn't thank me? Of course not. In fact, it gave me great pleasure. You see, because Santa Claus is the idea of giving for the sake of giving, without the thought of thanks or acknowledgement. When I saw that woman collapsed on the subway last week and I called for help, I knew she would never know that it was me that summoned the ambulance. I was just being Santa Claus when I did that.
Oh.
Yeah, so now that you know, you're a part of it. You have to be Santa Claus too now. That means you can never tell a young kid the secret, and you have to help us select Santa presents for them. And most important, you have to look for the opportunities to help people. Got it? Help each other this Christmas and be kind.
Now, Valerie, you're part of a group. You're part of so many groups I can't keep track. But you're part of a kind of a fun group that is eclectic, I'm going to say, because it's not all lawyers, it's not all tradesmen, it's just a group of friends that kind of gets together and hangs out. And you did something in that group last week that I thought was kind of special, and we have a story about it. Do you have anything to say about it before we hear the story?
No, I just that you're right that group, we are just a potpourri of folks, and we come from all different kinds of professions and backgrounds, and we have bonded and become a really good group of friends. So we just meet on Thursdays and we have coffee, and we congregate and we bond.
Well, this story is about spreading tidings of good cheer and joy, so let's hear it.
It was unseasonably warm December 16th in the dirt town of Lubbock, Texas. When I say unreasonably warm, we're talking about normal temperatures ranging from 25 degrees to 50 degrees. And on this day, it was to be 80 degrees. The sky was pinkish brown because the 50 to 60 mile an hour winds had stirred up the dust from the nearby farmland and painted the sky an odd shade of the red dirt farmland which surrounds the towns. This was the kind of day where massive amounts of dirt sticks up in your mascara or causes tiny dirt clods to form in the corners of your eyelids. The gritty taste of sand will accompany you if you open your mouth to speak or breathe outside of your car in this dust bowl. Never you mind the weather conditions. This Lubbock group of friends was on a mission and simply stated, we were on a mission to spread some cheer. It's not the kind of glad-handing and back-slapping cheer that one might expect from an office party where bonuses may or may not be handed out, where too much liquor is imbibed and too many sweets are consumed. Now, this group of friends, we have set out to make someone's holiday be truly cheerful. First, we set out to locate a suspect, someone in the service industry who would not likely receive a bonus or a holiday party. We zeroed in on places like the Pancake House here in Lubbock, Texas. And we looked at other cafes where the waitresses take the orders and they bring the food and they bust the tables for meager tips. But today would be different for one unsuspecting soul. And so here's what happened. Our group of bubbly friends bounced into the Pancake House, and we waited patiently behind the sign that needlessly stated, "Please wait to be seated." The place was so packed at this early hour in the morning that there was a waiting list, and only the list was not committed to writing, but rather was in strong memory of the aging hostess who eagerly greeted each guest with a smile and a strong commitment and promise of excellence in the world of pancakes and waffles. So this group of friends, we're giddy with anticipation because we know what's coming in. We're laughing and having a good time with each other like a group of high school kids waiting to be invited to a dance. And then finally the hostess seated us for a table of 10, and we gathered together, and the hostess said, "Merry Christmas, and Connie will be your waitress." And then Connie came up to us and she said, "Hi, my name's Connie. Welcome to the Pancake House. Can I get anything, anyone anything to drink? Some coffee, some tea, water?" And Courtney spoke first and asked if we could look at a menu. And so she passed out the menus. She pulled a pile of menus from underneath her armpit and handed them out. And at that moment, two customers walked by and whispered something in Connie's ear, and she kind of giggled and nodded. And after the coffees were ordered and juice and water, Connie bounced off to the kitchen to retrieve the liquid libations as well as supplies for the oncoming onslaught of pancakes, butter, and syrup. And when Connie returned, she was juggling all these cups of coffee, two glasses of water, an orange juice, and verbally or with a shake of her head, simultaneously responding to the request of the other guests that were sitting at the other tables. More ketchup, more hot sauce, napkins, jelly came from all the other tables. And then Connie looked at us and, "What will y'all have today?" And we looked at her and engaged in some idle chit-chat with her. And we asked her, "What do you recommend? What's good here? Do you have kids?" And Connie was too busy and needed to really turn to the other tables and in short order, and was probably a little bit worried that the manager would be all over her back if she didn't get to the other tables. But you'd never know it because, she just patiently answered all of our questions and gave us the attention and the smile and followed up with each of us. And then the group had really enjoyed our breakfast. And we really enjoyed Connie, and watching her work delighted us and caused us to lean over with smiles and nods and whispers. And after the food was delivered and the smallest portions consumed, what we did with anticipation for an opportunity to engage Connie in more conversation, at the conclusion of the meal, we gathered up the money to pay the tab. But then in addition to that, we gathered up, each one of us made a contribution, and it totaled $500 in addition to the amount of the tab, which was not that much because we really just had coffee and pancakes. And so Connie came back to pick up the cash to take it to the register, and she looked and she saw a $100 bill immediately. Her eyes noticed that. I saw her look at that, and then she got back to the cash register, and I know that's when she realized, because we all kind of watched her as she unfolded the money, and she realized there was enough for the tab, but in addition to that, there was $500 for her. and the expression of shock and surprise on her face was visible throughout the restaurant. We were all smiling, of course, as Connie came back to the table. And rather than making a claim that there had been some kind of an error, Connie just looked at our group and her eyes began to fill with tears. And after receiving the knowing nods and smiles and confirmation, Connie, choking back the lump in her throat, said, "Thank you. Thank you very much. You just made Christmas possible." And so we chalked that up to another victory for this group of friends. Anonymous happiness was spread that day. Another example of acts of random kindness and the cheer and joy that we bring not just during the holiday season, but all year round.
That's a beautiful story and well told. I love listening to that.
Thank you.
Well, we've got another classic story that I want to end with that kind of has to do with random acts of kindness and anonymous cheer. I can't do it justice. John Henry Falk has told this Christmas story since the 50s, and I first heard it when I was a small kid in the corner of my grandmother's house listening to a radio that's over in the corner. It's kind of rounded and got big knobs, and we all sat around and listened to John Henry Falk tell this story. I've paraphrased a little bit of it, but it's his, and I give him the credit. I'm just passing it on to you in case you haven't had a chance to hear it. The day after Christmas a number of years ago, I was driving down a county road in West Texas. It was a bitter cold, cold morning, and walking ahead of me on the gravel road was a little barefoot boy with a nondescript, ragged overalls and a makeshift sleeved sweater tied around his little ears. I stopped and picked him up. Looked like he was about 12 years old to me, and his feet were blue with cold. He was carrying an orange. He got in and had the brightest blue eyes one had ever seen. He turned a bright smile on my face and says, "I'm going down the road about 2 miles to my cousin's. I want to show 'em this orange that old Santa Claus brought me." But I wasn't going to mention Christmas to him because I figured he came from a family, well, the kind of family that doesn't have Christmas. But he brought it up himself. He said, "Did old Santa Claus come to see you, mister?" I said, "Yes. We had a real nice Christmas at our house, and I hope you had the same." He paused for a moment and looked at me. And then with all the sincerity in the world, he said, "Mister, we had the most wonderfulest Christmas in the United States down to our place. Lordy, it was the first one we ever had there. See, we never do have them much out here. We don't notice when Christmas time comes. We heard about it, but we never did have one 'cause, well, you know, it's just Papa says old Santa Claus, Papa hurrahs a lot and says that Santa Claus was scared to bring his reindeer down to our section of the county because folks down here are so hard up that they is liable to catch one of them reindeer and butcher it for meat. But just several days before Christmas, a lady come from up in town, and she told all the families out there, our family too, that there was, well, that old Santa Claus has come to town and is leaving some things for us, and if Papa would go into town, he could get some Christmas time for us all." And Papa hooked up the mule in the wagon. He went to town. But he told us children, now, don't y'all get all worked up and excited because there might not be nothing to this yarn this lady's told. We couldn't get our minds on nothing else, you know? And Mama, she come to the door once while we was out there and said, "Now y'all quit looking up the lane because Papa told you this might not be nothing but a long yarn." About the middle of the afternoon, well, we heard a team of jangling harnesses a-coming, and we run out to the front yard, and Ernie, my little brother, called out and said, "Yonder comes Papa." And here comes them mules with a big trot, you know, Papa standing upright in the bed of the wagon holding up 2 big chickens, all the feathers plucked off. He was a-yelling, "Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas," and the team stopped right in front of the gate. And all us children was a-swarming out there like a flock of chickens, you know, just a-crawling all over the wagon and looking in it. And, mister, I wish you could have seen what was in that wagon. It was bags of stripedy candy and apples and oranges and sacks of flour and some real coffee, just all tinsely and pretty, and we couldn't say nothing, just kind of held our breath and looked at it. Papa standing there and waving them two chickens and yelling, "Merry Christmas to you, Merry Christmas to you," and a laughing that big old grin on his face. Mama come up a hurry with the baby in her arms and a grin on her face. She looked in that wagon and she just stopped, cold still. And then Papa, he dropped them two chickens and reached up and caught the baby out of her arms and, held him up and said, "Merry Christmas to you, Santa Claus." And the baby, little old Alvy Lee, he just laughed like he knew it was Christmas too. And Mama, she started telling us all the names of them nuts in the wagon. They wasn't just peanuts. She had names for all of them. Mama, she knows a heap of things like that. She's seen that stuff before, And, well, we was, all of us, just a-chattering and a-going on and at the same time, and the young'uns looking in there and going here and there. And then all of a sudden we heard Papa call out, "Merry Christmas to you, Sam Jackson." And we stopped and looked. And here comes old Sam Jackson a-leading that old cripple-legged mule up the lane. And Papa said, "Sam Jackson, did you go to town and get your family some Christmas this year?" Sam Jackson, sharecrops over the creek across from our place. He shook his head and said, "Well, no, sir, mister. We didn't go to town. I heard about it, but I didn't know it was for us, too." All of a sudden, none of us children were saying nothing. Papa looked down at Mama, and Mama looked up at him, and they didn't say nothing, like they don't a heap of times, but they know what each other one is thinking. They're like that, All of a sudden, Papa, he broke out with a big grin and said, "Dad blame it, Sam Jackson, it's sure a good thing you come by here. Lord have mercy. I like to forgot. Old Santa Claus would have me in court if he heard about this. The last thing he asked me if I lived out here near you. He said he hadn't seen you around and he wanted me to bring part of this out here to you and your family, your wife and your children." Well, sir, Sam Jackson, he broke out into a big old grin. Papa says, "I tell you what to do. You get your wife and children and you come down here tomorrow morning. It's going to be Christmas time all day long. Come early and stay late." Sam Jackson said, "You reckon?" And Mama called out to him. She said, "Yes, and you tell your wife to be sure and bring some pots and pans because we're going to have a heap of cooking to do, and I ain't sure if I got enough pans to take care of it all." Well, sir, old Sam Jackson, he started off leading that mule up the lane at a full trot, and he was a-heading home to get the word to his folks and his children, The next morning, you remember how it was yesterday morning? Just rosy red like Christmas time? Well, it was cold, but you didn't notice the cold, When the sun just come up, just all rosy red. And us young'uns was out of bed before daylight, seemed like, just running in the kitchen and smelling and a-looking, and it was all there, sure enough. And here comes Sam Jackson and his team and his wife and his 5 young'uns in there with him. They was all a-looking over the edge. We run out and yelled, "Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas," and Papa said, "Christmas gifts to you, Sam Jackson. Y'all come in." And they come in, and Mama and Mrs. Jackson got in the kitchen, and they started cooking things up, and us young'uns started playing Christmas time. And it was a lot of fun, We just played a Christmas gift with one another and run around and around the house and just roll in the dirt, and then we started to go up to the kitchen door and smell. That's my favorite game. And we'd run up and smell the inside of the kitchen door where Mama and Miss Jackson was cooking at, and we'd just die laughing and roll in the dirt, and go around chasing and playing Christmas gift. We played Christmas time till we was all wore out. And Papa and Sam Jackson put a table up and some sheets over it and some boards up over some sawhorses. And everybody had a place, even the baby. Mama and Mrs. Jackson said, "Well, now, we're ready for y'all to come in. We're going to have Christmas dinner. And I sat right next to Willie Jackson, and he just rolled his eyes at me, and I'd roll my eyes back at him. And we'd just die laughing. There was an apple and an orange and some stripedy candy at everybody's place. And that was just dessert, see? That wasn't the real Christmas dinner. Mama and them had done cooked it up, and they just spread it up and down the table. So Papa and Sam Jackson, they'd been sitting on the front porch, and they come in. Papa, he sat at one end of the table, and Sam Jackson sat at the other. And it was just a beautiful table like you never seen. I didn't know nothing could ever look that or smell that good, And Sam Jackson, he's a real big man, and he had on a white clean shirt and some new overalls. Everything had been washed and was real clean. Papa said, "Brother Jackson, I believe you're the deacon in the church. I ain't much of a churchman myself, but I believe you're the deacon. Maybe you'll be willing to give grace and offer thanks." Well, old Sam Jackson, he stood up there with his hands real big, and he kind of held on to the side of the table, and he didn't bow his head like a heap of folks do when they're saying the blessing. He just looked up and smiled, and he said, "Lord, I hope you're having a nicer Christmas up there with your angels as we're having down here, because it sure is Christmas time down here. And I just wanted to say Merry Christmas to you, Lord. Like I say, mister, I believe it was the wonderfulest Christmas in the United States of America." Well, sir, we hope you've enjoyed this edition of Holiday TLC Podcast. And no matter what you're doing and where you find yourself in the world today, just know that we're all connected, we're all part of one family, and we're all part of one race, mankind. Happy holidays, safe travels, good verdicts to all. Thanks again for listening. To sign up for these TLC events, go to www.triallawyerscollege.com and select Register for our course at the top of the menu page. For more episodes of the original Trial Lawyers College podcast, subscribe to us on Apple Podcast or wherever you already consume podcasts. Do you have a topic of discussion that you would like to hear more about? Or are you interested in volunteering to be a guest on the original Trial Lawyers College podcast? If so, please email me at warriorforjustice@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening.